Welcome back to another episode of In the Driver's Seat. I am here with Peter Coffey, the VP of Strategic Research at Salesforce. And Peter, I'm going to start you off with a question, which is, what do you think about the word platform in today's technology companies? I think you spend a lot of time thinking about Salesforce as a technology platform, but you perceive it as much more than just a technology layer, and I'd love to peel that back.
It's important because I spent 18 years writing about business technology. A publication was PC Week when I started. It was eWeek by the time I left. And a lot of the time was spent on questions of platform choice. But during that whole period, I think people understood the word platform was defined by vendors to describe bundles of technology.
Right.
The server, operating system, database layer, and middleware stack were your platform. And then you built applications on top of that, and everybody knew what that word meant. Today, the word platform is not a shopping list. It's a strategic decision about what's the barrier, not the barrier, the floor, above which I will create and below which I will partner or consume. So, for example, if you're Intel, you probably do not mine your own silicon. You do produce your own chips. But if you're a computer maker, very few computer makers make their own chips. They consume chips or chipsets.
Right.
And then there are other people who do not buy chips. They buy pre-assembled modular computers and put them in stacks. At every level, the abstraction layer is higher and higher up, to the point where people viewing Salesforce as their platform are buying a data capability, an integration capability, certain pre-configured solutions with processes like sales and service, but then making those unique and distinctive, and it's the role of a company like Traction on Demand to show people essentially, here are the knobs you can turn and the levers you can pull that will turn this generic data and operations and integration and function and mobility platform into something that really is distinctively yours and in which you can create distinctive value.
Right. So one of the things that I think is so important for us to embrace these days is the idea of a platform and technology, and all the aspects that come of it are about, of course, solving problems. Right?
Yes.
And I had a great quote from you earlier today, which I believe was a quote of somebody else at some point.
Probably. I steal from the best.
Talking about how, don't fall in love with a solution. You finish the rest.
Yeah. That was a colleague of mine named Dan DeBow, who once said, if you want to have one brilliant success, have a great idea that solves a problem. But if you want to have a continued, steady succession of successes, fall in love with the problem.
Right.
Because then you don't become completely invested in your first idea in the context in which that was a bold innovation. You don't become anchored on that to the exclusion of new competing innovations. You instead become dedicated to solving the problem and then capable of broadening your umbrella or bringing in an ecosystem of partners and partnering with or developing or acquiring other technologies, because always you're focusing on the need you're meeting, not on the product that you are selling. And this relates to the transformation of so many long-standing models. For example, healthcare has always been about counting the pills and clocking the procedures because you could do that.
Right.
Measuring the wellness outcome that happens at some other time in some other place. Well, until we're all wearing Fitbits and Apple Watches, measuring the wellness outcome is tremendously difficult.
Right.
But now that's straightforward to do, and we can actually start to have people paying for their wellness achievement and having everybody aligned with keeping you well, instead of paying for the effort you make to make them better, and perversely the medical establishment making more money the sicker you are.
Right.
And realigning the customer incentive with the provider incentive, I think, is the pathway toward some of the most wonderful things that are happening in the world today, is when we have providers and customers actually wanting the same things instead of being, to some degree, adversaries.
Right. It's interesting because it's all about, to me, being outcome driven and outcome based, as opposed to individual result oriented or activity oriented.
The problem is that in most organizations, you define your plan as activities you will execute, and you define your measures of success as the volume of execution that you did.
Right.
Because measuring outcomes has been more difficult to do, and the degree to which you want to be defined by purpose, it can slip away from you so easily.
Yeah.
The degree to which you start measuring your output by what really should be viewed as an input. In fact, even in software development, I can't remember if it was Nicholas Witt or Edgar Dijkstra who said, the problem is people think that lines of code are an output because it costs so much to make them.
Right.
But they're not output, they're input. And doing something with less code should be rewarded. But so much of software development productivity is how many lines of code did you deliver?
Right.
And I tell people we've got, the Salesforce Apex language. There are billions of lines of Apex. I tell people every one of them is a needle in the Peter Coffee voodoo doll saying, why did I have to write code to do this? Why wasn't that a pick list?
Yes.
Why wasn't that a configuration option?
Right.
And the same way at Traction on Demand, you may find that it's necessary to get people to redefine success, not as the altitude of the pyramid they constructed, but there's some other measure other than the magnitude of how much work did you do.
Yep. It's and at the front lines, being a marketing and sales leader myself, you see this every day with sales reps being incentivized by activities and calls, and whereas of course the real outcome based is ultimately close deals and revenues, and actually even further than that is being successful customers. At the end of the day, who are getting value.
Well, let me give you one of my favorite examples right now. In a call center, typically, people are measured for average handle time and considered to be doing a better job if they get the customer off the phone sooner. Now, we have customers who are making what we think are high return investments in using technologies like chatbots and voice assistants to handle straightforward routine cases without a person being involved at all.
Right.
What this means is that if a person does get brought in, it's probably a non-trivial case, and handle times on average may go up. But if you're measuring handle time as an expense, that looks bad. If you're measuring the customer service perception of value delivered, the upsell opportunities that are being created, the brand loyalty that's being generated, you'll produce a completely different set of management behavior.
Yes.
So saying, oh, we're a data-driven organization, you can be data-driven right off the cliff.
Right.
You'd have to ask, why are we measuring this? And there's another related term in data science called streetlight effect. The old joke about you're walking down the street at night and the guy's looking under the pool of light under a streetlight, and you say, what's the problem, buddy? I dropped my keys. Can you help me find them? And you look for a while and you say, I'm not seeing them. He said, well, I actually dropped them in that puddle up the street. Why are we looking here? The light's so much better here. And the term streetlight effect, people look for their answer where the data is abundant, accurate, and cheap. And today there are many data sources that are vague, expensive, and hard to gain access to them, but those may be where the real value is. So if we're going to become data-driven, we need to be judicious consumers of data and not be driven toward the most obvious places.